So, all right, great. Looks like, no, it's on. Yeah, I'll give that in a minute. Okay. So, I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Ken Berry. We're just on the set of Reversed Season 3. So, we've been doing filming for the last 4 days. Dr. Berry, you tell us a bit about the show and what we've been doing here.
Yeah, so we're in Costa Rica. It's beautiful here, and we had 4 house guests who had some degree of metabolic illness or autoimmune condition, and we basically brought them to Costa Rica to teach them all of the benefits of a carnivore diet. And I think it went great.
Yeah,
I think it went great, and I don't know what network it'll be on. I don't know when it'll be out, so don't ask. It'll be out when it gets out, and I'll let you know. But I think that the information that's going to go public with this series is going to be paradigm shifting for many, many people, which is the whole point of doing it, is to help people understand maybe we've gotten lots of stuff wrong for the last few decades when it comes to not only nutrition, but medicine and medical therapy, and even physical therapy, physiology. We got a lot of things wrong. And so this series is a great first attempt to start to set the record straight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is a very good sign of things to come with these sorts of projects, recognizing a carnivore diet, having these sorts of abilities to reverse very, very serious illnesses like diabetes and others. That once that starts hitting the mainstream and start getting more and more shows like this, we'll be able to get this information out to more and more people.
Yeah, and the number of college students who are going to watch this, who are kind of undecided on their major, and then they're like, wait, there's this hypothesis that eating nothing but meat and eggs actually is good for humans. I'd love to study that. I think I'm going to change my major.
Yeah.
Like, you never know when a med student's watching, or a third year who's like, I can't decide. I don't really want to do mechanical engineering, and then they're like, wait, carnivore diet, dude, that's it. That's what I'm going to study. And so I think it's really going to spur a lot of new creative research. And a big problem with the state of nutrition and medicine is that it's all based on a foundation of a false paradigm.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous. Mm-hmm. But it's also ubiquitous. I mean, it's everywhere. Many things, as we all know, have just been based on bullshit. Sorry. But that's literally the technical term for what we're basing a lot of our current science and other things on. You can't do that with physics or mechanical engineering, because if the bridge don't work, the bridge falls down, people die.
That's it.
But in nutrition, you might be completely wrong about what you're saying, but it's going to be 40 or 50 years before the evidence starts to reveal itself. And so I think that reversed carnivore is going to be the beginning of a great paradigm shift in human nutrition.
Yeah, I think so too. And just like you said, a lot of these things are that we think about in nutrition and even in medicine are built upon false pretenses, like cholesterol's bad, saturated fat's bad, things like that. And when you have that, and you recognize and you have hard historical evidence that these were fraudulent, put out by very, very nefarious people, but for whatever reason they put it out, for whatever their interests were, they did put it out, and we know that they put it out under false pretenses. And anytime you have something based on a false pretense, you have to throw it out. So we have an entire decades of medical research and guidelines based on this false paradigm.
Absolutely. And in many circles, it's considered fine to eat sugar.
Yeah.
It's literally fine. And then in some circles, it's considered a health food to actually eat, fruits and honey and other things that are full of much more sugar than our ancestors would have ever had access to for more than a few weeks out of the entire year. And when there's false paradigms as a foundation of a nutritional or a medical paradigm, every research study done in that space is slanted and tilted by definition, because the foundation it's built on is just wrong.
Yeah.
And so I really think you're right. I think we're going to have to trash decades of nutrition research. And then obviously medical research is built on people eating a certain diet, because when you have humans in a medical study, even a randomized control study, they're still eating a shit diet.
Yeah.
And so are the findings that you found, are they relevant to somebody who's eating a proper human diet? Probably not.
Yeah.
And so there's probably entire swaths of pharmaceutical interventions that would become completely meaningless and bankrupt in the face of a large adoption of a proper human diet by a large section of the population. Those pharmaceuticals would literally become moot.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, it could be that there are people that don't want that. And it may be that, you know, we have these different industry sorts of papers and research that comes out that muddy the water and say, oh, actually, sugar's okay.
Sure.
Sugar's pretty good for you. Or, you know, something else is bad. And it sort of muddies the water, it protects their product, but it doesn't protect you or I.
Yeah, corporations have a long and well-documented history of funding research that throws doubt into the mix. You can read the story of big tobacco and how even as late as the 1980s, they were saying in front of the U.S. Congress, I believe, all the CEOs were saying, I believe that nicotine is not an addictive substance.
Yeah.
And obviously, even at that time, there was copious amounts of evidence that proved conclusively that nicotine was very addictive. But just these guys in three-piece suits sitting in front of the U.S. Congress saying that out loud, putting it on the permanent record, that muddied the water.
Yeah.
And so for decades, there are still people to this day that I'll meet online who say, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with smoking.
Yeah.
I think it's just, you know, the tree huggers at Harvard. They don't want me to smoke, and they're trying to take my rights from me.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, no, this is pretty hard science that nicotine's habit forming and that all the toxins in cigarette smoke are very, very bad for you. Yeah. But they muddy the water so much. And this same thing goes for fruit and honey. This same thing goes for whole wheat bread. This same thing goes for all of the vegetables that you need to eat 5 a day. Or in the U.S., you need to eat, you know, 7 to 11 servings of whole grains, and then 5 to 7 servings of fruit and veg. Right? It's always phrased that way because everybody loves fruit, but not many people love veg.
No. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Great. Well, we had a lot of people submit questions, so thank you for everyone who did that. So we'll get to a few of these and see how much time we have. We're still on set, so we may be interrupted. So if we have to go, apologize in advance. But so we'll start with one of these, and I think this is actually something we discussed yesterday a bit as well, and something that you and your wife have personal experience with. One question from a lady says that she's been carnivore for 3 to 4 years, but she cannot stick to carnivore during the first trimester of pregnancy specifically. Why do women get meat aversions during the first trimester, and what do you do about it?
Yeah, so the first trimester of pregnancy is a very unique time in a woman's life, and it is very common to develop food aversions. And so for someone just eating a varied mixed diet, a standard Western diet, they develop aversions as well. And often it's to something that's not meat. They'll not be able to eat bread for a while. They'll not be able to eat this or that or the other for a while. But if you're trying to stick to a carnivore diet, then if you develop a temporary meat aversion, that's a problem because that's a large percentage of your diet. And Dr. Kiltz and I were actually discussing this yesterday. Probably since so much development is like, oh, they just called me.
Okay.
So much baseline development is happening with the fetus in the first trimester. That's literally the make or break moment. It's probably that a woman's olfactory sense and her gustatory sense become very heightened. And women will say, yeah, I remember the first trimester, I couldn't smell a certain perfume. I couldn't tolerate it at all. And what the theory is that's probably to protect you from meat that's a little off or from something that you really should not eat at all, because it could actually affect the genetic development of your fetus. Meat aversions are always temporary. Nisha had I couldn't even cook a steak in the house when she was pregnant with Beckett. And so I would have to go outside and cook my steak on the grill, even in the cold months, because I had to have my steak, and she couldn't tolerate it. This was short-lived. It lasted about a month and a half. She lived on seafood and eggs during that time, so she was still getting preeminent nutrition for her and baby Beckett growing inside. but she could not tolerate the smell of mammalian meat cooking, and couldn't even think about eating it for a month and a half.
Okay. So, but there were options. There were
many other
carnivore options.
Absolutely,
as well.
yeah. And she did great. Beckett's beautiful and intelligent, and she loves her steak again.
Awesome.
So let me go get this set call, and if you want to, we'll pick back up. Yeah, man. All right, thanks.
Great. Okay. All right.
Aki.
Well, sorry about that, everyone. So we, we still on the set, and we're still filming different scenes. So we'll give them a minute. If things take a bit long, maybe we will just cut there and maybe go through the questions and then post them in a video. But if anyone had any questions about the show or about anything else going on, you can certainly ask that. Seems like a pretty healthy chat going on in the chat. Have I been sleeping? Not much. We have early starts and late finishes. So especially last night, I don't know what it is, but I do know what it is. The Airbnb that we're staying at has is in a very rural area, and there's just a ton of animals and dogs and coyotes and roosters that are just up all night screaming their heads off. So I was up pretty early today just because of all that noise. So someone asked, where do we watch the show? We're finishing it now, and then it's going to be shopped out to different networks. So that's how generally these projects go, where you'll do it and you'll have a package and you'll say, hey, this is what we have, what do you guys think? And then other, sort of like Hulu or Netflix or the different platforms, not necessarily Netflix, but others as well, will give an offer if they're interested in it. And so we'll have to see the previous seasons, because this is season 3. The previous seasons can be found on Bloom Network, and I think Pluto TV is a streaming app that you can watch it on as well. What am I most excited about for everyone to see on the Reverse series? So this was an absolute just masterclass on a proper human diet and a biologically appropriate diet, and why that matters and what the benefits are. And so I think that having all the different experts we had here, I mean, literally we had like a dozen people that are very well versed in this and have been living this themselves for many years, and have been helping other people with it for many years as well. And people like Dr. Barry, obviously he's been in medical practice for over 20 years as a family physician. He's been helping people with this and other ways for years on end, online and in practice. Dr. Philip Avadia is a cardiothoracic surgeon that is noticing that people don't need to really get cardiothoracic surgery if they follow these pretty basic principles that we've basically been told would cause these cardiovascular issues. And Dr. Kiltz, Kelly Hogan, so many others that everyone has their own piece of perspective. Like Bella, Steak and Butter Gal. There's so many people here that give a unique perspective to this. Coach Bronson as well. Tons. I'm forgetting everyone, and I'm sorry for that, but there are just a ton of people here that are giving their own unique perspective and insights onto this, and we're helping these 4 people as well get better. And just seeing their benefits and their improvements is actually remarkable. Some of these people have made wild improvements in their health and literally reversed and got rid of major illnesses like type 2 diabetes. So I'm very excited for people to see that. Do I eat butter and dairy? I do eat butter. That's the only dairy that I'll eat. Maybe occasionally a bit of cheese on some meat as a condiment, but that's pretty much it. I'm very consistently just meat and water and butter. I do fine with butter. Some people don't, but I do fine. I think I missed that one. Costa Rica is one of the blue zones where people live longer and healthier, eat lots of animal meat and fat. Maybe that's why. Yeah, it could be. You look at the blue zone paper. I won't call it a study because it's not. It's cherry picking 5 places that fit their narrative and actually don't fit it that well. They misled people a lot because like in Okinawa, they said this is a blue zone. This is because they eat these beets or something like that. And like, well, no one else is eating those beets. So, how is that our proper human diet? How is that something that everyone evolved on? It's not, obviously. But what they fail to mention is that people in Okinawa actually eat more meat than everyone else in Japan of who they're comparing them to. And they don't look at the blue zone of Hong Kong, where they eat more meat per capita and have the longest life expectancy in the world. So that's obviously a bit of so that's obviously not a study. The blue zone is misnamed the blue zone study. It is a piece of propaganda, and it's just written by journalists. It's not, and they're just pushing their own narrative. What do I think about the Lion diet? Well, I sort of live the Lion diet. I like the Lion diet. I think that you're going to do pretty well on that, and most people will do very, very well on that. Because red meat just seems to be the most nutrient dense and beneficial meat that we have available to us, especially like grass fed. Especially people with autoimmune issues like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, and psoriasis, all these different sorts of things. They seem to have problems with things like chicken, pork, fish, eggs, and certainly dairy. I think it probably has a lot to do with how the animals were raised and what they were fed more than anything. Because if they're not eating what they're supposed to eat, that can pass on to you. But 99% of what I eat is beef. Like we had some like pork chicharron, which is like pork belly with the skin on, sliced up and deep fried in lard, and just cooked. This is amazing. I've never had this fresh before. I've only had it sort of in packets, which was fine too. But this was like next level good. Like, it was absolutely fantastic. So I'll have things like that occasionally, but the vast majority of what I eat is beef. So I have a question here. Had my gallbladder removed 9 years ago and on a carnivore diet, but have problems of diarrhea sometimes. Pale poop, what can I do to fix that? So that's an issue with absorption of fat. So your gallbladder is what stores bile and concentrates it. So if you don't eat fat for a number of days or weeks, you'll have more concentrated bile, and that will go out and then emulsify fat and bring that in, because fat's very, very important. It's an extremely important nutrient, and we need it. So we can still eat a carnivore diet. We can still eat a high-fat carnivore diet without a gallbladder, but we do need to be mindful of the fact that you're not going to have a concentrated bolus of bile at one time, and so you might have to just split up your meals throughout the day and just space out your fatty meals throughout the day. Now, some people don't need to do that. Some people form what's called a pseudo gallbladder, which is just an outpouching in their common bile duct that acts pretty much the same as a gallbladder. It stores bile, concentrates it up, and then squishes it out. So there are actually quite a number of people that do a carnivore diet with no gallbladder, and they just eat one meal a day. So the OMAD style of doing things, and they're able to absorb all that fat. So if you're getting diarrhea on a carnivore diet, you have there's generally about 3 things that you need to think about. Are you still drinking coffee? That's a laxative. Are you using artificial sweeteners? Like, especially like the sugar alcohols like sucralose and xylitol, things like that. Those are definitely laxatives. And then if you're not doing that, if you're just doing meat and water, then you're probably eating more fat than your body can absorb. And it sounds like that's what's going on in your case, and because you don't have a gallbladder, so you'll need to space out your meals. But also think about coffee and the artificial sweeteners, because those will definitely add to that problem. Oh my goodness, a lot of questions. Well, Kelly Hogan just landed back home to catch that night. Oh, awesome! That's really great. It was lovely to meet Kelly Hogan. She was absolutely fantastic. She was one of my the first people that had me on her show when I was first getting started, and it was an absolute pleasure to meet her in person. She's just such a lovely person. If you watch her videos, she's just this bubbly, effervescent, just ball of energy and pleasantness, and that is exactly who she is in real life. That's not an act. That's not just for the camera. That's who she is, and it was just an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much for all of your kindness, Kelly, and it was an absolute pleasure to meet you. Oh my goodness. Let's see. So I've been on carnivore since October 22. My A1C is still 11.2. My fasting glucose is 230. When can I expect to lower it? You really should lower. Hey man, really should lower. Before now. I wonder what else you're eating and what else is in your diet and your environment. Maybe Dr. Barry's back joining us again. Just had a question here. Been on carnivore since October. A1C is still 11.2 and fasting glucose is 230.
So there's several things that could explain that. First of all, are you sure you have type 2 diabetes? That's the first question. And the way you know for sure is you have your doctor. And if your doctor hasn't checked this, you may need to find a new doctor. At this point, you need a fasting insulin and you need or a C-peptide. And if either one of those are either zero or close to zero, then you're a type 1 diabetic. And even though you're eating a perfect carnivore diet, you're still going to have very high blood sugars, and you have to have some amount of exogenous insulin that you inject or get in some fashion. Just regular pills for type 2 diabetes won't help you at all if you're a type 1 or if you've developed LADA later in life. And so that's the number one question that you've got to get answered. And if you have truly been strict carnivore and you still have an A1C of that, you're almost assuredly a type 1 diabetic who's been misdiagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, which is much more common than it should be. I've met multiple people who were diagnosed as type 2, and that's a misdiagnosis, and kept that diagnosis for 2, 3, 4, 5 years before some doctor finally said, let's check your fasting insulin. Yeah. And then they're like, oh shit, you're a type 1. We've basically been mismanaging you for however many years. So get those tests checked immediately. And now another thing it could be is some people misconstrue what a carnivore diet is. They think that it means adding meat and eggs to their existing diet. That's decidedly not carnivore. And I think you've probably been, if you follow Chaffee, you probably already know that. So it's probably going to be a misdiagnosis in your case.
Great.
What else can you think of? That's good.
Yeah. I think so, and and I always do wonder what people are eating, if you're still having, because you're exactly right. A lot of people think a carnivore diet is just they increase the amount of meat they eat and eat a lot more meat. And they probably eat less plants and things like that, but they don't realize that it's just as important to not eat all the other plants and carbs and sugar and artificial sweeteners and things like that it is to eat meat as well.
But with an A1C that high, the only other possible reason for this is that you've been misled into thinking that fruit and honey is part of a carnivore diet, which it absolutely is not. But that could land you with being on a I don't even want to call that carnivore. What is that? Animal-based diet. You could still have an A1C that high.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole thing with the HbA1c. I mean, that's a glycation product from high blood sugar, and you're not going to get high blood sugar from eating a high-fat diet. You really do need to take in exogenous carbohydrates. Generally, if you're if you do have diabetes, especially type 1 and type 2 diabetes, these things can make it difficult for you to manage your blood sugars, but you're still going to be in control of making your own blood sugars. You'll be making these things, so you really shouldn't have a massive number like that if you're not taking in exogenous carbohydrates, unless like you say that you're actually misdiagnosed. Yeah, great. All right, so we'll go back to the questions. Oh Jesus. All right. So, and this is something, again, you have personal experience with. Is carnivore diet safe for children and pregnant women? Their OBGYN is against keto.
Yeah, so your OBGYN currently believes the false paradigm that red meat is dangerous or bad, that animal fat is bad in some way. Your placenta and your baby inside, they are literally made of fat, animal fat, and animal protein. That is literally what they are. And so to even intimate that that's somehow eating that would harm something that is made from that's kind of silly on its face, right? And then secondly, meat and eggs with the yolk are the most nutrient dense foods on planet Earth. And so every pregnant woman should be maximizing the nutrient density of the food that she eats. And so if she's eating empty calories like whole grain bread, or she's drinking fruit smoothies, those things are essentially either nutrient void, or the nutrition is locked up in the lectins and the phytates and the oxalates and the other things. She's not even getting access to those, even though it may be listed on the label. Meat and eggs with the yolk are the only foods on the planet that are not only nutrient dense, but also the nutrition is supremely bioavailable and bioabsorbable. And both Beckett, who's now 3.5, and Bonnie Blue, who's 6 months old, Bonnie's got 2 little teeth. Yeah. Right, and so she's already been chewing on pork ribs. When I eat a pork rib, I give her the bone, and she gnaws on it. She gets the cartilage. Yeah. She gets the little remnants. Right, that was her first food. That was also Beckett's first food, was a beef rib in the same fashion. And when Beckett got done with the beef rib, he had stripped it so clean that when he dropped it on the floor, our little Yorkie poo didn't even want it. It was literally devoid of nutrition at that point, unless you boil it for bone broth. But yeah, both of our kids are going to be 90% animal food based. They eat all kinds of different meats. They eat eggs. Every now and then they'll have a pickle or a little piece of avocado or something like that. But the vast majority, and those are basically fun foods. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, let's see what happens when we give Bonnie a slice of lemon, right? Let's see her face. Just that kind of stuff that parents do. But when we think about what are we going to feed this child today for nutrition, it's always meat and eggs. That is the primary thing that's on their little baby plate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have entire civilizations still alive today that their children, pregnant women, and adults are exclusively eating meat.
Absolutely.
And going back into
and having beautiful, intelligent babies.
Yeah.
Eating a meat-based diet.
Yeah. With, big, perfectly formed jaws and teeth and bodies and brains. And as I'm sure most people who follow us know, before the agricultural revolution, our brains were about 11% larger than they are now. I think that is entirely a developmental issue, not a genetic issue. I think that's because we're not getting the proper nutrition that we need.
It was a direct result of the plants domesticating us.
That's it.
To grow them and eat them. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one lady asks, my daughter is allergic to meat. Can I help heal the meat allergy? I tried to find out if this was, what exactly they meant by allergy.
Right. So many people will do the food sensitivity tests, which are almost uniformly bullshit. Okay, just to use a technical term, if that's what you're basing that she's allergic to meat on, then that's foolishness. Throw that stuff in the garbage. She's not allergic to egg yolk. She's not allergic to meat. That absolutely is such a rare occurrence that it's almost not worth talking about. Now, if she was bitten by a tick and developed alpha-gal, then she will be sensitive or allergic to mammal meat for a few months, and this almost always resolves after a few months when the immune system calms down. Some people it'll last a year, and so she can keep trying little bites of meat every few months to see if that has resolved yet. But I've yet to see a case that was permanent. And I've yet to meet a human, either online or in person, who was truly had an anaphylactic reaction to eating red meat. I've yet to see that, unless they were bitten by the specific tick that gives you alpha-gal.
Yeah, that's literally been my worst fear for the last several years. Like getting this tick bite, I was like, oh my god, that would just ruin my life. Yeah.
But you can still enjoy all the seafood. Okay. Anything that flies or swims, you can still eat it without worrying about it. It's only an allergy to mammalian meat.
Okay, and it seems to resolve.
Every person that I've talked to who's been actually diagnosed with it, within 3 to 12 months, they're like, no, I can eat meat again, it's fine.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, right. So take a breath, it's fine.
Great. All right. What are your thoughts on raw milk on carnivore? So
raw milk is the least bad milk that you can drink. Now, this is a very complex issue, and so you can't. There's not a soundbite answer for this. So if a human being is under the age of 5, 6, or 7, raw milk is fine for them. Beckett drinks goat milk every day. He's 3.5. But about the age of 5, 6, or 7, we'll start to wean down and stop that, because there's no precedent in anthropology or in even zoology of an adult mammal drinking milk, except when they're basically our prisoner, like dogs and cats, and we give it to them. Okay. Now there is one recorded case of I forget what mammal it was, but on a dairy farm, it would lick out of the bucket after they would milk the cows. But you have to understand that's still an artificial situation that would never occur in nature, and so life is very intelligent. Life always finds a way, and milk is a great source of nutrition for young mammals. So there would absolutely be some bird or some mammal, some weasel, right? Some little marsupial that would have discovered the nutrition in milk and would sneak out and would be nursing the bison in the middle of the night while that would have happened by now. And I've spoken to several evolutionary biologists, and they're like, yeah, that's very odd that no other mammal ever takes advantage of the milk of another mammal ever. Like there's no case of that ever documented, except in artificial human created situations where the animal basically doesn't have a choice. And so all mammals are smart enough to know that when I'm an adult, I don't need milk. It's going to cause problems either from the lactose or from the caseins and wheys, which for most adults are inflammatory to at least some degree. But if you insist on drinking milk, please drink raw milk, and preferably raw A2 milk from a sheep, a goat, or from an A2 cow. That's probably the least bad option. But so the anthropological record shows that we started to drink milk on a regular basis 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, which, if you think about the entirety of human existence on planet Earth, is just a blink of the eye. Very short. It's not enough time for us to have evolved. Now, lactase persistence has developed 3 different times, and once in Asia, once in Africa, and once up north. And so we are slowly evolving to be able to tolerate milk as adults, but we're not there yet. And that by no means makes milk a health food for an adult. By no means makes it any kind of optimal food for an adult. It just means we can tolerate it. It's a great starvation food. So if you're starving to death, yes, drink all the milk, even pasteurized, homogenized. But if what you're trying to do is optimize your health as an adult, and from the way I've studied this and looked at this, milk plays no role in that for adults.
Yeah, I think that's the same sort of way of thinking about certain domesticated plants as well. You know, we have some populations. You know, agriculture has developed for 7 times independently around the world over time. Right. And you have in some of these populations, especially going back to the earliest examples, the descendants of those populations that have survived have some resistances, but certainly not. It's certainly not optimal. It's certainly not our biologically appropriate diet.
Exactly. It makes it a great starvation food. Yeah. That's what grains are. That's what milk for adults is. And the only reason we developed those things in the first place, a lot of people think of they call it the agricultural revolution, right? Like it was some breakthrough, like it was some leveling up. And it was actually a response to the loss of megafauna. We were basically starving, and so we were like, we got to do something because we got all these kids to feed. Let's start doing this. But that doesn't ever make it an optimization food. And those are 2 very important concepts, because basically the nutrition guidelines of every country in the world, they're recommending that you eat lots of starvation foods. And they're recommending that you avoid optimization foods that are going to give you your best physical health, but also your best mental health and your best hormonal health. It's almost as if they want to keep men in a kind of a low testosterone, inflamed, overweight condition. And then the same for women. They want to keep their hormones addled and confused and their mind muddied. I'm not sure why they're so adamant that we all eat these starvation foods. I find it quite concerning. I'm not sure what the motivation is at the top, but I'm not going to fall for it.
No. And there are certainly examples throughout history of a dominant political force restricting and limiting the amount of meat to
multiple examples of this. And in many cases, it was illegal for you to have access to the livestock or the animal foods that come from the livestock. That was not for you because you were a prisoner or a slave or a pauper, and it was literally illegal for you to eat those foods.
Yeah, and that was an example in England where this was the case. You weren't allowed to eat these big sort of animals, so people had to flesh out their meals on rabbits. You could sort of catch rabbits. There were enough of them around that you would catch them.
Still technically illegal, but harder to catch you doing.
Exactly.
And if you dropped a big, beautiful deer.
Exactly. The king's deer.
It was all the king's animals.
Yeah.
But isn't that weird? But you could grow grains and beans. That was fine. You could have that, but you don't touch the king's animals.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite telling.
Yeah. And there was a period where there was a plague that sort of wiped out most of the rabbit population, and there was mass starvation and death throughout England because now they couldn't get the only source of animal nutrition and protein and fat. Not much fat on a rabbit, but at least there was something there, and people died en masse.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's multiple examples of that in archaeology and in history, and I think we should all start to think about these things a little differently. Like, why are they recommending 11 servings of grains a day, but you should limit that red meat?
Yeah. And
because when you look into the science, there's literally no support for that. So then what's their motivation? Why are they so adamant in pushing it? You know, they could say something like, well, we're not sure, but we think you probably ought to eat lots of grains and avoid red meat. That would at least be more honest.
Yeah.
But for them to be like, no, this is the way you should eat. That's concerning, I think.
I think so too. And you look back at ancient Rome when people started getting a bit uppity and the air was a bit more rebellious. The first thing they would do was cut off the meat supply to the people, and there was bread in circuses. The reason it was bread in circuses, not steaks in circuses.
Yeah.
So just keep people docile. So
domesticated,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, you see the different sorts of people that are pushing the plant-based fake meat sort of thing. The Davos crowd. There's famously pictures taken this year. Every single plate was full of meat. That was what they were serving at this place where they said, we need to get rid of meat.
The menu was leaked, and it was literally steak and lobster. Was what these guys who are telling you to eat the grains and beans. They were having steak and lobster. Yeah. I don't know. Surely that's a coincidence, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, people, and Bill Gates is one of these guys as well. I don't have anything in particular against Bill Gates, but I grew up next to him. I grew up in Kirkland, Washington. He's in Bellevue, Washington, Medina. And there's a place called Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in downtown Bellevue, where anytime you go there, you have a 50-50 chance of seeing Bill Gates there. He eats there all the time and gets big old steaks.
Yeah.
And so, he's not going to be cutting in to that fake meat anytime soon.
He might invest in it and encourage you to eat it, but he's having a Ruth's Chris steak.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a bit of a question that isn't necessarily nutrition based, but probably more of a logistical one that's probably as important or more. Which is, how do you filter this message down into the school systems, K through 12, and get this, sort of a broader reach message into the kids nowadays, especially with schools now pitching a plant-based diet or even vegan diet. In Australia, there's actually schools that are purely vegan, and you are not allowed to put meat in your kids' lunches at all.
So I don't think there's an answer to that coming from a legislative or a administrative level. I don't think you're going to have any effect on that trying to, like in the U.S., run for a seat on the school board. I think this is coming from so high up. The only solution for you and me is to feed our family a proper human diet and to teach the people that we love, our friends and family, this is the right diet. This is the diet that's going to give you the best hormone configuration, the best mental clarity, the best physical strength, the best stamina, the best resilience, maybe even anti-fragility. This is the diet that's going to do that. And so this has to be grassroots because the top has been completely captured in education, in nutrition, in medicine, you're not going to have any effect at the changing at the top. This is going to come from the ground up. And that means you have to eat a proper human diet, and you have to teach your friends and family and everybody you care about, hey, whatever you do in public, that's fine. But when you're in the privacy of your own home, you eat meat and eggs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think that we're necessarily going to be able to, to fight through with these schools on a one-on-one basis. I know a lot of parents in Australia and Perth who are don't like the fact that they aren't allowed to send meat in with the school in with their kids, but they have really not much they can do about it. But if you teach your kids to eat the right way, maybe even just fast during school or something like that, just don't eat anything, and just avoid this. But once we get like sort of a critical mass of people that understand this and just say absolutely not, we're not going to do this, then the schools are going to be less able to sort of impose their will as well.
What a sad commentary on the state of modern education, that a child's going to have to sneak into a bathroom stall and eat a few sticks of beef jerky in order to get the nutrition that their growing body and brain needs. And they're going to have to sneak real human food and eat it in private, eat it in secret, to help their body grow and help their brain develop, because they'll get in trouble if they're discovered eating real human food. It kind of sounds like the king's animals, doesn't it?
It does.
It's odd.
Yeah, there's an ad campaign going through in Australia at the moment, basically trying to miseducate parents to say that it's just not safe to put lunch meat in your kids' packed school lunches, that it's not going to be refrigerated, so this can just go bad and spoil, and
instantly
mass plague and
instantly covered with the plague.
Yeah, exactly. Even though we've been doing this for decades.
Right. Over 100 years, hundreds of years. I mean, how many men have taken a chop of meat with them wrapped up in burlap or just stuck in their pocket before we had, cool Captain America lunchboxes? You would just wrap it up in some cloth or something and take that cut of meat to work with you so you'd have something to eat. That just beggars belief that a school system with a straight face would say something like that. It really is concerning about the future of humanity.
Yeah. Well, that's it. They make these statements, and as Thomas Sowell likes to say, without any evidence either asked for or provided.
Right.
They just make these statements. You see like those old black and white pictures of the guys building like skyscrapers in New York, and they're sitting there with this little lunch pail there. 100%. What do you think is in there?
All day out in the sun in a metal lunch can, and somehow they didn't die.
Exactly. I've had whenever I cook brisket, I don't put it in the fridge because we never refrigerate leftover meat because it's going to be gone in a day or two anyway. Exactly.
But to even imply that that's going to spoil within seconds, that's foolishness. And everybody with any common sense knows that. So that's why like if I had Beckett in that school, I'd be like, are you guys effing stupid? What are you even talking about? Do you teach real science at this school? And if at all possible, I would pull Beckett out of that school immediately, because obviously they're not teaching real science.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too that parents can do is if they start imposing this sort of thing on them, you just pull your kid. People are moving schools and homeschooling, and if that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do to protect your kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So here's an easy one. Can you get scurvy on a carnivore diet?
Well, I've yet to see anybody do it. And I've actually, after I had been very strict carnivore for a year and a half, I actually got a serum vitamin C level checked, and it was still within normal limits.
Okay.
A year and a half of nothing but meat and eggs. And I did include liver, some kind of liver, chicken liver, cod liver, maybe calf's liver or sheep liver once a week. And so there is vitamin C in fresh meat. And there's lots of vitamin C in liver and spleen. And then you have beautifully laid out the argument that when you're eating a essentially zero carb diet, you don't need nearly as much vitamin C to not only prevent scurvy, but also to have all of the anti-inflammatory effects that vitamin C might play a role in a high carb, highly processed diet. If you're eating the standard Western diet, you probably do need to take a vitamin C supplement because you've got so much sugar in your bloodstream, it's competing for the receptor. But if you're eating a very low carb diet and fresh meat and is part of your daily diet, not overcooked, and liver is a once a week food for you or once every 2 week food, you're never going to develop a vitamin C deficiency. This has been shown in tens of thousands of carnivores, some of which have been carnivore for 20 years.
Yeah. And and as we were talking about before, and as you mentioned there, is contingent on a carbohydrate-free diet, because carbohydrates increase your demand for vitamin C, because you're not going to be absorbing it as well, you're not going to be utilizing it as well, and you actually need far more vitamin C. So, I always think about, people, if you're eating fruit and all that sort of stuff, well, there's going to be some vitamin C in there, so you're going to be sort of offsetting that. But if you're, say, drinking a lot of milk or something like that, you could potentially get enough carbohydrates in your meal that you'll actually not get enough vitamin C.
The case reports of scurvy in modern society that I've read are predominantly people on what we would call a tea and toast diet, just something like that has no nutrition and also no vitamin C. I read one case report where a guy was living on a highly processed meat product. It was not fresh meat. It was not meat that he was cooking on the grill. It was like just a preserved, dried thing that had essentially been destroyed in the factory. And so they really made a big haboo about, oh God, this guy ate meat and got scurvy. But if you actually read the study, he was eating bread and this dried, highly processed meat product, and he was not eating any fresh meat at all. And I don't know of a single case report in the literature where someone was eating fresh meat routinely and got scurvy. And there's actually a randomized, not a randomized control trial, but a control trial in humans when Steph Austin was put in the metabolic ward for a year, and he ate nothing but meat. So this has been actually proven that human beings don't develop scurvy if they have access to fresh meat.
Yeah. And do you remember from that study, was that cooked meat? Was it like largely raw? Or
no, it was cooked meat. Yeah. I think it was cooked meat. I don't know how well it was cooked, but he may have been eating some raw meat as well. And I don't know if he was getting organs, but I know that he was under direct observation for a solid year and ate nothing but meat. Yeah. And did not develop scurvy. So that kind of study design that can be used as proof.
Yeah. And as you say, there are so many people that are living as carnivores now in Western societies for decades and decades and decades, eating, just normal store-bought cooked meat. There was a guy that I spoke to who just inadvertently became a carnivore when he was 15 because he just didn't want to eat vegetables. A man after my own heart, and just started eating just meat, and he's been doing it for 40 years. And that's just what he wanted to do. And he went from being the shortest guy in his class at 15 to being the second tallest on graduation. He ended up sprouting up to 6'6" in 3 years. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And he's just been eating meat ever since. He's like, I feel good, and this is doing good by me. And he definitely cooks his meat as well. And so I think that's hopefully alleviate some people's misgivings and concerns.
This is awesome. Let's do one more.
Yeah. Let's get a good one here. Okay, let's do this. How can carnivore heal anxiety and other mental illnesses?
So it seems like a large degree of mental illness is due to some sort and some degree of inflammation in the brain, whether it's within the neurons themselves, whether it's around the axons, whether it's around the synapses. I don't think we know that yet, but there are more and more psychiatrists every day using either a ketogenic or a carnivore diet as a therapeutic intervention for depression, for anxiety, for OCD, for multiple, and I can tell you from personal experience with my ADHD, it's 80% better when I eat an exclusively animal-based diet. And when I say animal-based, I don't mean fruit and honey. I mean meat and eggs. When I do that, I still have ADHD, but it's controllable. It's tolerable. It doesn't irritate Nisha nearly as much. But I would, if anybody either has a mental illness or has a friend or loved one that has mental illness, I would highly encourage you to look at the work of Dr. Chris Palmer and Dr. Georgia Ede, EDE. these guys were pioneers in this area and have had great success and are now starting to publish literature showing stunning improvements in symptomology of mental health with either a carnivore diet or a very red meat heavy ketogenic diet. So if you know anybody with mental illness, you need to put the names Chris Palmer and Georgia Eade in their ear, because it could literally change their life for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Palmer is a professor of psychiatry at Harvard, and he's been there for 20 some years, and he just wrote a book called Brain Energy, which I just read, which is excellent. And it shows that this can actually be, just down at a fundamental level of the mitochondria and the dysfunctions thereof, and that this can cause a lot of different problems, and that psychiatric issues actually can be caused by metabolic issues. And by going on a carnivore diet or ketogenic diet, carnivore diet is really just an ultimate ketogenic diet, that after days, weeks, and months, you actually improve the function of your mitochondria. You replace old and damaged mitochondria for a new, better working mitochondria, and you increase their number. So there are studies showing that after several months on a ketogenic diet, that you will have 4 times the number of mitochondria, and they're 4 times as effective and efficient. So you're getting a big, big, big bonus here.
That sounds important.
It does.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for doing this.
Thank you very much,
Thanks
sir.
for
I
having
really
me, man.
appreciate it.
All right.
Absolute pleasure.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, everyone. All right, guys. I hope you guys all liked that. That was an absolute pleasure for me. And I just saw one little question there by someone who said they're doing BJJ. Do they need to eat carbs? Absolutely resounding no. You don't need that. You're much better off if you don't have carbohydrates. You will make carbohydrates and ketone and glycogen and muscle glycogen, liver glycogen when you're training, and you will have basically unlimited access to energy because you have access to your fat stores. As soon as you eat carbohydrates, you cut that off. Okay, and so by the work of Professor Tim Noakes shown that you actually do much better exercising, working out at a high performance international level when in ketosis. Okay, so hope that helps everyone. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. I hope you like it. Okay, guys, we'll see you later.